There's something about schools at night, the silence, the flickering lights, the feeling that someone's still there even when every door is locked. Think about it, hundreds of kids, decades of history, all trapped within those same four walls. What happens to all that energy when the final bell rings and the halls go dark? We've all heard whispers and urban legends, but what you're about to hear is different. These are 3 real school horror stories from right here in the United States. They're told by the people who experienced them firsthand. The janitors, teachers, and students who swore they'd never go back after dark. I used to go to this small community college in northern Illinois. It wasn't anything fancy, you know? Just a couple of old brick buildings, hallways that creaked with every step, and a cafeteria that always had this faint smell of bleach. To help pay for my classes, I worked part-time with the janitorial staff. It definitely wasn't glamorous, but hey, it paid the bills. Most nights, it was just me and Mr. Harlan, the head custodian, cleaning out classrooms after everyone had gone home for the day. He was a quiet guy, but he had this one rule he always told me: never go down to the old basement in the East Wing after 10 p.m. He'd always say the lights down there were faulty and that the big storage room just gave him some seriously bad vibes. Of course, I laughed it off at first. It sounded like something you'd say just to mess with the new guy. I thought it was just an old building being an old building. One wish I had listened. It all changed one night when I had to go down there alone. It was late, almost midnight, and I had a total facepalm moment when I realized I'd left my phone charger plugged into an outlet in one of the offices downstairs. To make matters worse, Mr. Harlan had already left early that night, so it was just me. I grabbed my trusty flashlight from the supply closet, thinking it would be a quick trip. The moment I opened the basement door, a wave of cold air hit me. It was noticeably colder than the rest of the building. The air was heavy, and every little sound just bounced off the concrete walls, the constant low hum of the old pipes, the squeak of my own shoes on the dusty floor. It was unsettling. I made my way down the long hallway until I reached the end, where a metal door with a faded sign read, "Storage, do not enter." The door was slightly ajar, just cracked open, and that's when I heard it, a faint humming. It was so quiet at first, I wasn't sure I was actually hearing it. It sounded like someone was softly singing to themselves. I froze, my heart starting to pound. My first thought was that maybe another janitor was down there, someone I didn't know about, but the melody, it didn't sound right. It was slow and completely off-key. It sounded almost like a child humming through gritted teeth. It was just wrong. My voice cracked a little as I called out, "Hello? Is anyone down here?" Complete silence. The humming stopped. The sudden quiet was almost worse. My instincts were screaming at me to get out of there. I started backing away slowly towards the stairs, trying to tell myself it was just my imagination, the old building playing tricks on me. And then, from inside that storage room, I heard it. A distinct metallic sound of something small rolling across the concrete floor. It clinked and clattered its way out from under the door and came to a stop right against the toe of my shoe. I aimed my flashlight down and my blood ran cold. It was a name tag. An old, scratched-up plastic name tag, the kind student workers wear. I could just barely make out the name etched into it. Emily. My breath caught in my throat. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Just earlier that week, I'd overheard some of the older staff members talking in hushed tones about the girl who died in the storage room years and years ago. The story went that she was a student worker just like me who had gone missing one night during her shift. They said she was found a week later in that exact room. I dropped the name tag like it was on fire and I ran. I didn't even think, I just booked it. As I scrambled for the stairs, the humming started again, but this time it was louder, clearer, like it was right behind me, echoing in the narrow hall. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and my heart stopped. In the pitch-black hallway, I saw a faint shape. It was pale, with what looked like long, dark hair, standing perfectly still, just watching me. I bolted up those stairs and didn't stop running until I burst through the main doors and was standing under the safety of the streetlights outside, gasping for air. The next morning, my hands were still shaking when I told Mr. Harlan everything that happened. I expected him to laugh or tell me I was crazy. But he didn't. He just looked at me with this sad, tired expression and said, "That room was sealed for a reason. I quit that job a week later. I just couldn't do it." But even now, every time I drive past that old college building at night, I swear I can still hear a faint humming coming from somewhere deep beneath the floor. I was a senior at Ridgeview High in Pennsylvania, one of those small towns where you can't even get a coffee without running into someone you know, the kind of place where nothing really happens. But that changed one gray, freezing Monday in mid-November. Our regular history teacher, Mr. Lang, was out sick, and in walked our substitute. He was a tall, quiet man, probably in his late 40s, who introduced himself as Mr. Ellison. None of us had ever seen him before, which was weird in a town this small. He didn't say much. He just handed out worksheets and then retreated to Mr. Lang's desk, where he sat and watched us. He wasn't grading papers, he wasn't scrolling on his phone, he just stared. His eyes were the weirdest part. They didn't scan the room like a normal person's would. When he looked at you, it felt like he was memorizing your face, burning every detail into his memory. I remember my friend Kim leaning over and whispering, "He's kinda creepy, right?" I just nodded, not wanting to draw his attention. The weirdness dial turned way up during lunch. A few of us decided to stay in the classroom to eat, and we started joking about how strange the new sub was. That's when Kim suddenly went quiet. She was staring at the whiteboard. She pointed. "What does that say?" she asked. We all looked. Written faintly under a layer of old dry erase smudges, almost invisible, were the words, "Don't let him lock the door." A chill went through the room. It looked like someone had tried to erase it over and over again, but the message just wouldn't disappear. We tried to laugh it off, figuring it was a prank from another class, but none of us really believed it. The vibe was just too off. That afternoon, for our last period, Mr. Ellison announced we'd be watching a documentary. He dimmed the lights, pulled a USB drive from his pocket, and plugged it into the projector. The familiar hum filled the room, but what appeared on the screen was not a documentary. It was grainy, black and white security footage. At first, it showed empty classrooms and hallways from our school. It was unsettling, but we figured it was some old school safety video. Then the camera angle changed. It was our classroom. From that very morning, we were looking at ourselves. The same clothes, the same desks, the same people. It was a live feed from a camera we never knew existed. A girl in the back screamed. Instantly, Mr. Ellison shot up from his chair and yanked the remote, killing the video. The screen went black, plunging us back into the dim light. "Sit down," he ordered. His voice was completely different now. The quiet, calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a sharp edge of anger. He strode to the classroom door and twisted the lock. The click was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It echoed in the dead silent room. My heart just stopped. The message on the whiteboard flashed in my mind. "Do and let him lock the door." Suddenly, Kim lunged forward, shoving her heavy wooden desk towards him with all her might. "Run!" she screamed. Her voice broke the spell, and chaos erupted. I scrambled to the old, crank-operated windows, desperately twisting the handle, but the rusty frame barely budged. Mr. Ellison was shouting now, his voice frantic and panicked. "You weren't supposed to see that. They'll come if you—" He never got to finish his sentence. The locked door swung open. It was our vice principal, Mr. Harris. He stood in the doorway, looking confused. "Mr. Ellison?" he asked, the name sounding foreign on his lips. Mr. Ellison froze. All the anger and panic drained from his face, replaced by a look of pure defeat. Without saying another word, he silently picked up his bag, walked past the vice principal, and disappeared down the hallway. We never saw him again. An investigation was launched, of course. It turned out there was no record of any substitute named Mr. Ellison ever being hired by the school district. The USB drive he used was gone. A few days later, maintenance crews found several newly installed hidden security cameras in a few classrooms, including ours. They were all unplugged, except for one. The one that had been pointed directly at our desks. We never found out who he was or what was on that USB drive. We never found out who they were or why he was watching us. It's a story that never got an ending, a ghost that still haunts the halls of Ridgeview High. My name's Jake, and I want to tell you about something that happened my sophomore year of high school in Colorado. It was one of those things you try to forget, but it just sticks with you. I was never a bad kid, but I was always getting detention for dumb stuff like late homework or skipping gym class. Usually it was just boring, but one Friday, things took a turn for the weird. A massive snowstorm was rolling in, and the school was a ghost town. Most teachers had already bolted for home. But our principal, Mr. Reeves, was a real stickler. He insisted that detentions would run as scheduled. So there I was in a dimly lit classroom with two other students, Mia and Luke, and the teacher supervising us. I'd never seen her before in my life. She introduced herself as Miss Carroll. She seemed polite enough, but something about her was just off. Her voice was this low, calm monotone, almost like she was trying too hard to sound normal, and her eyes, they barely blinked. She just sat there, staring at us. The vibe was already unsettling, and we hadn't even started. Our task was simple: write apology letters for whatever landed us there. Miss Carroll sat at the big teacher's desk, her hands folded neatly, just watching. Her gaze was intense. As the snow started to really come down outside, the lights in the classroom began to flicker. It was spooky. Luke, trying to break the tension, joked, "Guess the power's scared of her." Miss Carroll didn't even crack a smile. She just said, in that same flat voice, "Detention is a time for reflection." Sometimes the walls reflect too. We all just looked at each other. What did that even mean? That's when we heard it, a soft, scratching sound. It was coming from behind the chalkboard. At first I thought it was just mice, but this was different. It was rhythmic. Tap, 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 tap. It sounded almost like someone was trying to write something, but from the other side of the wall. Mia, who was sitting next to me, leaned over and whispered, "Do you hear that?" Of course, we all did. It was impossible to ignore. We looked over at Miss Carroll, hoping for some kind of explanation. She didn't say anything. She just stared at the chalkboard, her expression unchanged. Then she spoke so quietly we could barely hear her. "Some students," she said, "never finish detention." Before any of us could process that creepy statement, the lights went out completely. It was pitch black. Absolute suffocating darkness. I heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Then a whisper that seemed to come from right beside my ear. It was cold, and I couldn't make out the words. Then came footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, circling the three of us in the dark. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. We were all frozen in our seats, too terrified to even breathe. After what felt like an eternity, the emergency light above the door flickered on, casting a dim, eerie glow across the room. We all looked towards the teacher's desk. Miss Carroll was gone. Not just her, but everything, her coat, her bag. It was like she was never there. But on the chalkboard, written in messy, faint white chalk, were 5 words, "Stay seated until I return." We didn't need to be told twice. We bolted, we ran out of that room, out of the empty school, and into the blizzard without looking back. We didn't stop running until we were far, far away. The following Monday, I tried to explain what happened to my actual history teacher. I told him about Miss Carroll, the scratching, the lights, everything. As I spoke, the color drained from his face. He looked at me, completely pale, and said, "Jake, there hasn't been a Miss Carroll on staff here for 10 years. She passed away. During a snowstorm, right here at the school. They never held detention in that room again." And to this day, whenever a big snowstorm hits, students swear they can still hear it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from behind the walls. Thanks so much for listening to my story. If you have any creepy school stories of your own, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there.